Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone. And now, here is your host, the lovely, delightful, insightful, and all-around great gal, Ms. Barbara DeLong.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Nightlight. Tonight is really a kind of exciting time for me because we're going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that's how to get rid of things like anxiety and fear and all sorts of other awful things that we seem to fall into. I have as a guest tonight an amazing man. His name is Dean Sluyter, and he spent a lifetime learning authentic methods of natural meditation from Eastern and Western sages and sharing them with thousands of students, including prisoners, tech innovators, filmmakers, high school students, and entrepreneurs. He's completed numerous retreats and pilgrimages in the Tibet, India, Nepal, and Europe, and for decades he led workshops throughout the United States. The book that we're going to be talking about, and he's written several, all of which are phenomenal, but the one that I happen to be slightly expert in because I've read it a couple times already, is called Fearless, and it's been described as, I love this description, Om meets we. He careens merrily from the Buddha to Willie Nelson, from prison stories to the Wizard of Oz, but it all leads us step by practical step and loving step towards a life of peace. Who knew that learning how not to be freaked out could be so much fun? He is an acclaimed teacher, and he shows us in this book how to use simple meditative techniques and subtle tweaks of body, mind, and breath to open life to deep, relaxed confidence, drawing on ancient Enlightenment teachings as well as contemporary research. He lays out practical, easy-to-follow steps for addressing all of the above and much, much more. He has taken, throughout the book, he has thrown in quotes from the Buddha, Jesus, and Gary Seinfeld. And all of them, certainly all of the comments apply to the material that he is working with. He is an amazingly adventuresome spirit. He's unique. He's talented. I think he's here. Is that you, Dean?
I'm here.
Yay.
I'm here and just enjoying all the lovely things you're saying about me.
Well, it wasn't that I was stretching things out. I do mean them. No,
Great.
You've been on a phenomenal journey, and it's a journey that once somebody gets into that space where I know they're spiritual and I want to have a greater part of it, and I want to include it into my life, and I want to incorporate it into my everyday, modality and stuff like that. it's like what you want, and then it like, okay, this is what I want. I want to have an awakening on a spiritual level, because you suddenly realize that there is that level out there, and then it's like, how the devil do I get there?
Right. Yeah. No, after a certain point, when you get the, it's kind of like when you go into the ice cream store and they have all those flavors and they have the little spoon to give you the sample tastes. And once you find whichever, you find that one, the rum raisin or whatever, you go, I got to have more. There's no turning back now.
Yeah. And so you started young, Zen, which didn't last long, but
yeah, about 3 days.
Okay, well, hey, you gave it a good shot. How did you stumble across what did work for you?
Well, what happened was, first of all, I started getting those first little sample spoons of someone's whistling at us. Is that a parrot or an admiring gentleman?
No, actually, it's my cell phone. I have it hit me at random moments during the day to give me an ego boost.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
It's the coolest thing in the world because, if I'm in the grocery store, somebody will say, who was that? And I cannot say, I don't know, but it must have been for you. And the smile on their face is just so incredible.
Yeah, that's great.
And everybody smiles when they hear it, even if they don't know where it came from.
That's great. That's great. So, yes. For me, I started getting those first little samples of a spiritual experience, if we're going to use that word, experiences of opening awareness, awakening, really in childhood. As early as when I was 4 or 5 years old, I had some very specific kind of opening experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in San Francisco for my freshman year of college, and it was the mid-'60s, and it was the perfect it was the perfect place and the perfect time, not only because the Summer of Love was going to happen in another year, but because the United States had just loosened up their immigration laws, and teachers were starting to come from other countries. So Suzuki Roshi came from Japan and started the first full-time Zen center in the U.S. there in San Francisco. Bhaktivedanta Swami came from India, and actually he started the first Krishna Consciousness Temple in the U.S. in New York, and the second one there in San Francisco. There was Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach with the great ecstatic Jewish mysticism, and there was Sufi Sam, and it was just all happening there. So I was able to go around and get the samples, and as I said, I tried to be a serious Zen student for about 3 or 4 days. But I could see very quickly that idea of, okay, you've got to sit like a stone Buddha. You can't move. And just like what's happening there on the outside, what's the same sort of thing is supposed to happen on the inside. Hold your mind that still, that unwavering. And I could see very quickly that I was not going to be able to do it. And the Zen teachers themselves say that. They say it's not for most people. So as someone who really wanted to keep repeatedly dipping into that opening experience that I had accidentally stumbled into in childhood, and also from the beginning, I wanted to be able to share it. I've always had a teacher impulse. I knew I had to find ways to do this that were accessible to regular, ordinary, fidgety people like myself, with fidgety bodies and fidgety minds. What I realized was that I'm pretty much average. So I continued. Again, San Francisco in the mid-'60s was the perfect place to be. And I found teachers who are plugged into genuine, authentic traditions going back for centuries to places like India and Tibet, where through a lot of research and development, what's been found is that what's been found is that the most effective way to meditate is not to try to hold your mind still, not to try to push away the thoughts, because really any effort to create a non-agitated state of mind is itself a form of agitation. So
Absolutely.
it's self-defeating. And what those teachers showed me is that if you stop pushing, so to speak, and allow yourself to be pulled, just allow the mind's natural gravitation to peace, to silence, to happiness, to fulfillment, since the greatest, as all the masters of every tradition promise, the greatest happiness, the great silence is there inside us. You know, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Nirvana is within you. Since it's within us, pretty much you just have to take the first step, get turned in that direction, and just, relax and let gravity take over.
Absolutely. I know that I've been in the field for about 50 years. So,
so we're from the same era.
Yeah. That's why I laughed when you were talking about when you were in California. I have always been on the East Coast, so it was a little different here, but not much. And so what I am finding, after being in this field as long as I have been, there are wonderful places where you can feel that moment of being truly in that zone. And I'm to what it does is it vibrates through your body and you become one with the sound. And there's just nothing like being one with something. And it can be magical. But everyone today, today especially, there is so much fear and anxiety and pressure and all sorts of things hitting everyone, right, left, up, and down. It is not a time nor a society that leaves time for finding, hours and hours where you can meditate and try to find that spot, or give yourself an hour a day to try to get yourself into that place. And so many people I talk to say, when I say meditation, they go, "Oh, I can't meditate. It's impossible. I always have thoughts that go through my head." And I keep saying, yeah, but, you have to kind of let them just go. And your book is so amazing because it makes it, I don't want to say simple or easy, but it is.
Yeah, it is. It's simple and easy.
Exactly
it is.
What it is. Didn't want to insult you.
But I know there's a hesitation to say that, because if we say simple and easy, we can worry that, well, people will think this is not the real thing. This is not the good stuff. This is the watered down kindergarten level stuff. But in fact, if you study deeply, and I know you know this because you've been studying this stuff for 50 years, if you study deeply into the traditions, you find out that actually the simple, easy, effortless, the non-doing, the non-meditation, where it becomes just being, that's the advanced stuff. That's the, for example, in Zen, all the stuff that I could not do, all the introductory stuff of sitting and trying to concentrate on this, concentrate on that. Eventually you get past all that, and you practice what in Zen is called shikantaza, which means just sitting. Just sitting. And what I managed to do was find the teachers who showed me you can go straight to that with you have to have very clear guidance. It's not complicated guidance. Our minds want to make it look complicated, but you need clear enough guidance to show you how simple it is. and then you can go straight to that. And that's why it doesn't take hours a day or even an hour a day. In general, the way most people go about meditation is they sit, concentrate, they try all those things. As you say, people say, I can't get rid of thoughts. I can't get rid of thoughts, and I've been at this for 50 years. But what I know is you don't have to get rid of thoughts. So people sit, and they sit down and they hold their bodies rigidly, and they try to get rid of thoughts, and they concentrate and all that. And it's so exhausting that after 45 or 50 minutes of that, finally the mind becomes so exhausted that it just slips into letting go. And then, around the end of the hour, they've got 10 minutes of just sitting, just letting go. And then they open their eyes and they go, oh, that was so great, man. It took a lot of hard work and an hour to get there, but I'm going to do this again. Now, what my teachers showed me was how to essentially skip those first 45 minutes and just go straight to the letting go part.
Yeah, and I know you have a book on meditation, and certainly that would be a fabulous book to have as well. You also, on your website, which is I'm going to spell it out. It's your name. It's Dean.
Well, you know what? There's a better way because
yeah.
no one can spell my name. The easiest way to get to my website is fearlessbook.net. That'll take you there. Yep.
So if they go to that website, you have meditations that lead people through all of this, and it's free. And
audio. It's audio tracks that they can stream from the site. Mm-hmm.
And that gives you a master teacher taking you to the place where and what's so cool is it's so comfortable and it's so relaxing. You're pretty sure that you couldn't possibly be meditating, but you are. Yeah. And the book, Fear Less. Why did you write Fear Less? It's a great title and it's a great book. But you've already done the meditation book, so why Fear Less as well?
Right. Well, because just as you were saying at the top of the show, there is so much of that in the air right now, and there's these things that seem like different things: fear, anxiety, loneliness, rage, addiction. Shame, all of this stuff, which all seems so different. How can we address all these different things? And of course, on one level, they are different. At another level, at a deeper level, at the root level, they really all come from the same place. And that is, they come from being cut off from that oneness, that wholeness, which is our true nature, which is what we are and what existence is at its depth. Of course, in one sense, we can never really be cut off from it. A wave can never be cut off from the ocean, but the wave can forget that it's part of the ocean. So it can be cut off from being consciously part of that wholeness. And then we think, I'm just this poor little wave. I'm so puny. I'm getting pushed around by all the other waves. Someday I'm gonna subside back into the ocean and die. And but then we start to look in a sense, meditation is like the little wave just looking down into his or her base and going, wait, where do I leave off and the ocean begin? And you realize there is no separation. I am that vastness. And whereas waves are always sloshing around and active and, and that's our life out here on the level of time and space. And it's also our mind, the movement of our mind, all those thoughts that people think they need to get rid of in meditation. All that stuff can go on the surface. Meanwhile, all the time, you go a foot or two below the surface, and the ocean is silent. And the ocean is always resting in its bed.
And what I loved was, I want to get to that part, but I want to. Well, let's go into the fact that in meditation. No, let me go back because most people don't know how to start, and you have such wonderful, what do you call them? On-ramps to meditation.
On-ramps, right.
And ways in which to sort of ease yourself into a meditation and to get that relaxation. And the one that I love, the one that I have played with the most is breathing through your feet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
in fact, that one, the day before this book was published back in March, that chapter, Breathe Through Your Feet, went up on Oprah's website. It's running on Oprah.com, which was great. And I've been getting emails from people saying, boy, this breathing through your feet thing is so effective. I've started doing that at night to go to sleep, and you're going to put Ambien out of business.
Yeah, good. And it basically is visualizing your breath coming in through your feet and going back out through your feet. And I guess it takes the focus off of everything else and it puts it on your breath, which then does lull you into sleep.
Well, it could be sleep if it's sleepy time and the lights are out and you're horizontal, but it doesn't have to be sleep. It can just be settling down, getting more clear, getting more open. I want to point out, and this is where actually the one thing I know that I'm good at is I'm very precise with language. And I just want to tweak two words that you used there just now in describing the technique. One is you say, okay, you visualize breathing through your feet, and that there's some visual image might happen, but that's not the instruction that I give exactly. What I say is, imagine, kind of feel like you're feeling. Okay. And people listening can do this right now, wherever you are. So first, let's back up a step. Just to get what is this imagine/feel business. So if I say, for instance, your right ear. Now, right away, there's some shifting of the attention to your right ear. Am I imagining it? Am I feeling it? Not quite sure, but whatever it is, it's effortless. As soon as I say right ear, there's no effort putting it there. If I say left kneecap, right away, there's some experience of left kneecap. So now, soles of your feet. Okay, attention goes there. Are we imagining it? Are we feeling it? I don't know. But it happens effortlessly. Now, also effortless, we're already breathing. Nothing special to do there. So now just as you breathe in, just imagine, feel that you're breathing in through the soles of your feet. As you breathe out, imagine, feel that you're breathing out through the soles of your feet. Just keep doing that. Now, we're not trying to focus. That's that other word. I always like to banish that word because then people sometimes will start to make effort. No, we're not trying to focus on anything. We're not trying to push anything away. Thoughts are there in the background. Sounds are there in the background. We're just easily breathing in through the soles of the feet, breathing out through the soles of the feet. And that's it.
That can be done in the car. That can be done anywhere, anytime.
Anywhere. You could use that as an on-ramp into sitting, you could sit down and close your eyes and do that as an on-ramp into your, whatever, 5, 10, 15 minutes of meditation. Or you could do it right in the thick of battle. Let's say you are, you're standing in line at the pharmacy waiting to get your prescription filled and you're feeling fidgety, you're feeling restless, maybe you're feeling worried about whatever illness you have that's requiring you to stand in line for a prescription. And you've got a couple of choices. One is to stand there and just be completely caught up in all that churning. The second choice is which is what most people do these days, which is automatically your hand goes in your pocket, you whip out your cell phone to distract yourself. And because, you haven't checked your email in at least 7 or 8 minutes. And then the third way is, okay, well, I'm standing here in line at the CVS or the Rite Aid. I'll just breathe through my feet. And, then things just have a way of mellowing out. And yeah, it's just totally cool to be standing here in line at the pharmacy.
Well, and it does work magically. It really does.
Yeah.
And you have a couple of other, well, you have several other on-ramps that you talk about.
Yep.
I love the ah.
Yes, this is, and especially people who've done some meditative practice and hung around in yoga studios, they're generally familiar with mantras like Om, which of course is very profound and powerful. I have a couple of favorite mantras that I share with people. One of them is ah.
Great one.
You know, yeah, it's like I associate it with the last day of school. Back when I was in school, the last day of school, I've taken my last final exam. I come home, you throw the backpack or the book bag or whatever into the corner, you flop onto the bed, and you go, ah. It's the sound of letting go. The sound of letting go. It's very powerful. Now,
gotcha.
yeah, and then another variation of that is singing descending fifths, and you may be familiar with. Everyone's familiar with this because in this country we all know the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say, stop right there. Ah, in music that's called a descending fifth. And for reasons that we don't have to get into right now, that is going from in terms of the sound vibrations, from the maximum tension to the maximum resolution, the maximum letting go. So this is a really good thing to do like in the shower in the morning when you've got everything's echoey and you've got the nice warm water going. And on that upper note, you can imagine that you're like a little droplet that's suspended in space, and it's you know, kind of, it's tense. You're having to defy gravity to keep suspended in space like that. And then as you drop into the lower note, it's like the little droplet drops into just a sea of warm water and melts into it, and just melts into that boundlessness. So you take a deep breath and you go,
Very cool.
Just one of those, and you can be pretty gone. Now, by the way, I'm kind of a baritone, so you know my voice is a little low. You find the place where that second note is the lowest note you can sing comfortably at full volume, and that's the best place to do it. But wherever you do it is fine.
Well, and it also, you know, is great tonal work for your voice if you happen to be speaking in front of a group or something like that. I mean, it just. I know that I served for 5 years in a spiritualist church, and I found it took me an hour to get there, and during that hour, I sang, I talked, I did everything I could to make sure that my voice was ready to talk.
Right.
Not sing, but talk.
Right. Yeah. No, me too. I mean, I talk for a living and do some writing. And so I've got to keep my voice, you know, I'll lead these workshops where, you know, they're going 4 or 5 hours and I'm talking through most of it. Yeah, it keeps your voice real. And also that kind of vocal work is important for women, especially women in the workplace. We hear so much about how in the workplace, women's voices, both, you know, physically, vocally, and kind of, you know, emotionally, women's voices are drowned out by the louder, more powerful men's voices. Well, doing this kind of simple thing helps literally to strengthen your voice. It strengthens all the muscles around the vocal cords, and it brings out the low overtones so that it doesn't make the pitch of your voice lower, but it makes it the overtones lower so that you sound a little more like a lion and less like a mouse.
I have found that the higher the voice, the squeakier it gets, the more people turn it off. And the
Yeah.
lower it gets,
Yeah.
the more comfortable people are listening to you. So,
Mm-hmm.
I have never had a squeaky voice.
Right.
I have allergy voice right now, but for the most part,
Right.
it's kind of in the middle, which is great for radio.
Right.
You talk about resting in awareness and as awareness. Can you
Right.
explain the difference between the two?
Right. So once we spend a few minutes taking some on ramp, typically when we sit down to meditate, right? Now we're talking about the time of meditation.
Yeah.
And the on ramp can be whatever you like to do. It should be something you like to do. If you like to sing descending fifths, or you can gaze at something, gaze at a flower, or if there's some spiritual person's picture you have, you like to gaze at the Buddha or at the Blessed Virgin or your guru or whatever. Do that for a while, just to have let the mind have some place to settle a little bit, and then let that go. So you're just sitting there with the eyes closed. And as we were saying before, gravity's going to take over as long as we let it. But if we just say do nothing, that's too open. People just start to, well, do nothing. Now what? Where's the remote? We time to light a cigarette or something. So what we do is notice that, for example, if you look to your left right now, you're aware of certain objects, certain colors and shapes. And if you look to your right, you're aware of different objects, different colors, different shapes. If you look now straight ahead of you, you're aware of different objects, different colors and shapes. So what we're aware of keeps changing. For example, if I look down at my body, I might say, well, that doesn't keep changing. But of course, the body I'm seeing now is not the same one that I saw 30 years ago, or even 30 minutes ago, actually. So what we are aware of keeps changing. The one constant is that we are aware. Awareness itself is actually closer to our beingness. It's more true to say that awareness is what we are than to say the body is what we are. Because the body's just one more thing we're aware of, and it keeps changing. Whereas awareness is like, we could say, is like the open sky. It's like open space. And all these things all the things we're aware of, the things that we hear, see, taste, smell, touch, think, all those things are like different breezes blowing through the sky. And the sky doesn't care. This one's going to blow from the north. This one's going to blow from the south. This one's going to be a gentle zephyr. This one's going to be a violent hurricane. Nothing dents the sky, and nothing improves the sky. The sky is just open space. Now, if we pay attention for a minute or two, we start to realize more and more clearly that this is what our awareness is like. Our awareness is like aware space. It has no color. It has no density. It has no story. That's good. Therefore, it has no problems tied to the bumper like a bunch of tin cans. All that stuff that we think we are is really just stuff we're aware of. Awareness is the one thing. It has no colors or sounds or anything, but it's what we are. It's always here. So we just rest in this awareness, or if we realize, oh, this is what I am, rest as this awareness. It's just a slightly more accurate way to state it. Rest as awareness, meaning just remain as you already are. Remain like the sky, which is open to the comings and goings of all these thoughts and sounds and colors, and just remain like that. There's a great book. I'm looking across the room to my bookshelf right now. It's sitting there by. It's the teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi, great 20th century Indian sage, and the title of the book is "Remain as You Are," and that really. Yeah, it sums up the whole, that's the deepest teaching of meditation. It's like if you're sitting in a chair, are you sitting in a chair right now?
Yes.
Okay, so if I say to you, okay, Barbara, sit in the chair, and you say, yeah, okay. And I say, well, now what do you have to do to be sitting in the chair? And you go, nothing, I'm already sitting in the chair. So what do you need to do to be awareness? Well, nothing, I'm already awareness. So just remain as you are. Just kick back and relax into that and let all the comings and goings come and go like breezes in the sky. And if you do that, after you can just sit that way for a little while, gravity takes over and the settling down happens all by itself. We settle deeper and deeper into the open sky-like, space-like nature of our own awareness. And thoughts will come along. Is this really working? Wait, can it really be this simple? Fine. Those are just more thoughts. Happens to everyone. Those are just some of the thoughts, some of the breezes coming and going in that sky of awareness.
Do you ever get to a point in time when there is total silence? Or you feel total silence, even though there's stuff going on around you, you just feel silence?
Yes, there you go. There's always total silence because the ocean, starting about 1 or 2 feet down, the ocean is always totally silent, even though, just exactly what you're implying there, even though there's a bunch of activity, waves sloshing around and storms and all that on the surface. And this is precisely what we discover in meditation. The reason that we don't have to eliminate our thoughts, and in fact, the reason why it's better to not, once in a while we might have a situation where we're not thinking for a while, and that's fine, but it's actually not important. What's important is we discover that the real silence is the nature of awareness. What color is your awareness?
It has no color.
Of course, it has no color. We're aware of colors. We're aware of, this book is blue and this rug is red and so forth. Everything that has colors is stuff we're aware of. Awareness itself, like open space, has no color. All right? Now, what sound is color? Is it high pitch or a low pitch? And of course, it's none. It's silent. So that silence we're looking for, we keep looking for the silence among the things we're aware of, including the churning of our mind. But actually the silence is the awareness itself. And it's a mistake. It's a very common mistake to try to find silence by flattening out, by beating down all those thoughts. We don't have to. We just settle down into the awareness within which the thoughts are coming and going. It's kind of like, when you're at a restaurant, you're sitting there by yourself eating your piece of whatever, apple pie, and there's all these conversations going on at the neighboring tables. Now, to just be sitting there enjoying your pie, you don't need to shush all those other conversations. You're just enjoying your pie. That it's so delicious that's what you're paying attention to. And those conversations are somewhere in the background. If suddenly you decide, oh, wait a minute, how can I enjoy my pie while all these people are talking, and you go around trying to shut them up, then you've created a problem. And that's what we call trying to meditate.
Yeah. I had a group once, and somebody brought a baby. And the baby didn't cry, but burbled, throughout the entire meditation. And it was fascinating to see some people say, well, I kept hearing the baby and I couldn't meditate, while others said, I didn't even hear the baby.
Right.
And it was pretty, you can't say, well, one of you was meditating and the other was not, but which I didn't do.
And then the third thing that a person might say, which in a way would be the most kind of profound answer, was, yeah, I heard the baby, and so what?
Yeah. And, I think you have a lot of those kind of terms in there,
Right.
Does it matter? And
it doesn't
the one
matter,
that you,
right?
the one that is in there so often, which is, it's there so often it has to be more profound than I have thought it is, but it's come and see.
Come and see, yeah. And that's my favorite quote from the Buddha himself. He said it in his language, the Pali language, ehi passiko, come and see. Not come and believe, not come and hope, not come and indulge yourself in, metaphysical speculation and theories and all that. But it is scientific method. Come and see. Experience directly and see what's actually going on. And that's all you need. And this was centuries before scientific method was supposedly invented in the West. Except that in the West we made great advances by directing that scientific method outward to the things of the physical world, which is great. The Buddha directed that scientific method to what we could call the inner direction, to the nature of awareness itself. And what he discovered was, the nature of awareness itself is everything we were looking for on the outside, the happiness, the fulfillment, the stability, the silence that we were looking for on the outside. It's been right here all along. It's been the one who was looking. It's like we've been shining this flashlight around, looking for the light. Let's see. This object is kind of shiny. Maybe this is the light. This object is pretty shiny when I shine my flashlight on. Notice you never see anything when you don't shine your flashlight on it. You only see it when you've lit it up with your flashlight, the flashlight of your awareness. And so you think, maybe this thing is the light. This thing's the light. And eventually you realize, no, the light is the light. I am the light. This is, Jesus said that. I am the light. And that I think did not mean just me and no one else. It means this is what we all are. This is the nature of the I.
Yeah, no, I something that in what teaching I do, I'm constantly saying to people, you go within, you have the answers, you have the roadmap, you have all the information you need. It's in there. Trust yourself. And so many people flounder, and it gets for them frustrating. I hear this. You're telling me to go inside myself, but I'm already in here and I can't find the answers. And it's so. What I love about your book is you give them techniques to get to where they need to be in order to find that bridge of understanding or whatever it is that they're looking for. Because it's so important, especially today, for people to be able to get in touch with that awareness inside of them.
Right. And to bring that together with, again, really the headline of this book, the title of this book, Fear Less. It's not that we're going to become fearless. I haven't met anyone who's completely fearless, and I'm not. To some degree, we need fear in our life. It's a mechanism that nature gives us so that when you're walking along the trail and you hear that rattle sound, you don't stop and think about it. You jump out of the way. So the fear mechanism is supposed to be there, but. And I tell this little story, if you're like this one friend of mine who can't walk into a pet store to, look at the puppies and the turtles, because if there are snakes in tanks there, she's afraid that the snakes are going to smash their way through the glass of the tanks and fly through the air and jump into her face.
Absolutely.
So in that case, the fear mechanism, which in itself is not a bad thing, is just gotten all out of calibration. It's been cranked up to 11.
I should meet her because I believe angleworms are only snakes in training. I'm the same way, but yes, it is definitely overreacting. And it is, even though it's overreacting, you're pretty sure it's going to happen anyhow. So
Yeah, and the thing is, it's largely physiological. Our bodies have, the autonomic nervous system has two branches: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And again, these are mechanisms we need. When the sympathetic branch of the nervous system is switched on, that's the so-called fight or flight syndrome. That's the arousal state. That's when the blood flows to the skeletal muscles, our heart beats faster, our adrenaline flows, our mouth gets dry, and we're ready to either fight something or run away from it. Now, we needed that when we were, cave people, and when you heard the roaring of the woolly mammoth, you had to be ready to hunt the thing or run away from it. So, fine. But today, we don't hunt a lot of woolly mammoths. What we do is, a lot of us, is we live in cities, and every time we hear the bus engine, it sounds to our nervous system like a woolly mammoth. And so it tends to arouse that fight or flight syndrome, so that we tend to be in a state of hyper-arousal all the time. Especially people who live in cities, and now more and more, because we become addicted. Even if the thing is messing us up, we become addicted to it. So this is one of the reasons why people, the moment there's no stimulation, there's no arousal, these days they immediately whip out their iPhone to, okay, let me engage with something that'll keep me stimulated. Anything but silence. Anything but settling down.
Now, you do talk. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to say that there's now the other branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is the parasympathetic. And that has the opposite function as the sympathetic. That's for, instead of fight or flight, that's for, stay and play. Just settle down, everything's fine. And all of these meditative techniques and breathing techniques, which I share in my workshops and in the book, all of these help to switch off the sympathetic nervous system and switch on the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's how we cool our jets. So it's not just some imaginary thing. It's physiologically very real, very solid.
Now, you use this with prisoners. You've worked with prisoners for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah.
How do these techniques work with them?
Exactly the same way as everyone else. And I love working with them. They're kind of my favorite people to work with. For one thing, they get the importance of this in a way that kind of more than most people, because most of us that have been, blessed with the luxuries of a life out here, some kind of middle class life, life of relative comfort, we can still sort of fool ourselves into thinking that, well, the ultimate solution to my situation is going to be found in something external. Once I get that job, once I get that car, once I find that romantic partner, that'll do it. That'll be it. It goes all the way back, excuse me, it goes all the way back to when we were little kids. Mommy, Christmas is coming. Please buy me the Barbie doll. If only you buy me the Barbie doll or the G.I. Joe, whatever, that'll be it. It'll make me so happy. My head will explode. I'll never want another thing. And
I'll
really
never ask for anything else. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, those of us who were fortunate enough to live fairly, middle class or better lives, we got the Barbie doll or the G.I. Joe. And it really did seem like that was it for a little while. And then it starts to wear off. And then it's, Mommy, Barbie's lonely. She needs Ken. She needs Skipper. Barbie's homeless. She needs the Barbie dream house. The next thing. Now, guys in prison can't pin their hopes for a better life on the next nice thing, because they're not going to get any nice things. So they know they have no choice. They have to look inside. And I mean, I've had guys who would come to our meetings happen every Thursday night. This is at Northern State Prison in Newark, New Jersey, where I've been supervising this group since 2005. And I've had guys who would stop showing up for a couple of months, and it's because they've been put in administrative segregation, which is a polite term for solitary confinement, with, you know, no TV, no nothing. And then they come back and, you know, they're very, very happy that they knew how to meditate, how to turn inside, because the outside, there's nothing there.
Well, and if you turn inside, you have total freedom.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, especially when you're able to tell a bunch of guys who are locked up in prison, some of them serving 30-year sentences, you are freer than most people walking around on the outside, and they get that. They're experiencing that. Come and see.
Yes, I love that, and you have a lovely story in your book about the perfect guru, and it's a fabulous story, and I have tried sharing it with some people, and they at first they go, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me!" And then with a couple of them, then it was the, "Wait a minute." Yeah.
Right.
Tell that story. Right. It's such a great story.
Yes. So, and there is a chapter that in the book where this story occurs, and the chapter is called "That Guy." That guy.
Yeah.
And I tell the story how I was sitting one Thursday night with my group at Northern State Prison, and they were talking about someone was talking about some problem he was having with someone, and he said, "Yeah, you know, he's that guy." And they started to go on. I said, "Wait a minute. What do you mean that guy?" He said, "You know, it's as in everything would be okay if it wasn't for that guy." We always have one. And sometimes that guy, for them, sometimes that guy might be a particularly brutal corrections officer. Sometimes that guy is your cellmate, your obnoxious cellmate. You know, it could be anyone. Sometimes they said that guy is your wife back home. It could be anyone. And I said, "Oh, okay, this is interesting." Now, we had been looking into the modern history of Tibet, and so they were familiar with the political situation there, which is how in the middle of the 20th century, communist China took over Tibet, destroyed 98% of the temples, did terrible things to people, I mean, just slaughtered thousands of people, and forced the Dalai Lama into exile. And I pointed out to them, I said, you know, when people ask the Dalai, and that invasion from the Chinese was, of course, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao Zedong. So, as I explained to my guys, my prison group, when people ask the Dalai Lama, who was your supreme teacher? Who is your guru? And he always says, Mao Zedong, because it was through Mao Zedong that I learned patience, I learned forbearance, I learned compassion, I learned looking inside to find the ultimate okayness because things were really messed up on the outside, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we concluded in our conversation there in prison is that guy, for the Dalai Lama, Mao Zedong is that guy. And for everyone, that guy, whoever he or she is always your most important teacher, is always your perfect guru, is always going to bring you exactly what you need to deal with and what you need to learn.
It's so profound, and it's so true, and it's so frustrating. Because you want to walk away from that guy. You want to get them out of your life. You don't want to learn from them, and yet.
And but by definition, you can't get rid of that guy. He just keeps being there. Yeah.
And somebody.
for a lot of people right now, and I try to avoid getting on either side of political arguments, but the reality is for a lot of people right now, that guy lives in the White House.
Mhm.
And he's a very, very difficult that guy to be okay with for many millions of people. That it's a real challenge.
Well, and obviously one that is important for them to learn to deal with in
Yeah.
order to move forward.
Right. Now, one important point we need to make is that this does not mean that you become passive and apathetic. So
Right.
if you're that guy, if your perfect guru happens to be someone that politically you feel is just terrible for them to be where they are, and you feel that it's important for you to try to get them out of office, it doesn't mean you say, "Oh well, it doesn't matter." That's like the caricature of spirituality. That, "Oh, it's okay. I'm so mellow. I'm so enlightened. It's okay to let the kids go and play on the freeway." Or I'm just marinating in spiritual bliss, so I don't have to go to my job today. I don't have to do my homework. In fact, the reality is it's just the opposite. This is why in the great classic text of meditation in India, the Bhagavad Gita, the teachings are given not to a monk sitting in a cave. They're given to Arjuna, a warrior on the battlefield just before going into battle. And what he's told is, okay, first settle down within yourself. Find that perfect silence that's always there, no matter how crazy things are on the outside. And then you can come out and fling yourself into into all the craziness of the battle. You'll be okay.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I just that to me was one of the most profound things that I read in the book, because as I look back on my life, there were people that in retrospect taught me more than the nice people that I had classes with.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so much more about myself through learning how to deal with that guy. And
Right.
it was an amazing teacher. Now, I haven't written any thank you notes, but I do acknowledge that I learned a lot from
Right.
them.
Right. And
I don't
if we
thank you notes.
extend our no, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thank you notes are not required, I don't believe.
I don't think so. But what we can do is thank that guy in our heart. Thank
Okay.
because especially if it's a person who is creating trouble and just really there's such a pain in the neck, it's because they are suffering.
Yeah.
It's because they are frustrated, they are scared. All of that. There's a quote from Gandhi, which I have in the book, which is the problem is fear. We think it's hate, but it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and all the kind of tribalism that to a very large degree our society seems to be retreating into. It's just my side versus your side. Back in the just to talk about the political scene for another moment. Back in the days of right up through the days of Ronald Reagan, the Reagan administration, the Democrats and the Republicans would bash away at each other in the Congress all day, and then in the evening the Democrats and the Republicans, they'd go out drinking together and playing poker together.
Oh yeah.
And that's how, even though they would make these speeches against each other the next day, they knew that ultimately they could work together. Now that doesn't happen anymore. They don't. It's like, no, that's not just the loyal opposition. That's the enemy, and we can't fraternize with the enemy.
Yeah, it has gotten to extremes.
Yeah, and people are afraid. people are afraid of anyone, that they're afraid of people that are different from them. There's some incredible statistic that I dug up from the time of the election in 2016, that something like 45% of Democrats are afraid of Republicans. Not hate Republicans or resent them, are afraid of Republicans, and about the same percentage of Republicans are afraid of Democrats.
Well, I think part of it is we have access to so much information, and we don't know what to believe and what not to believe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that makes it very confusing.
Yep. And the other aspect of that is that we have access to so much information that anything that's bad or shocking going on anywhere in the world, we know about it. It all comes, whereas, for centuries, right up until very recently, we know about the bad things happening in our village, and then, eventually, within a few weeks, someone would come by our village on a horse and tell us about the bad things happening in our kingdom, but we didn't have to know about the bad things happening in the rest of the world. Now we know it all.
And we hear it immediately. And
yes.
It is frightening. I mean, this world it's a very big place, and there's a lot going on that isn't good, and there's a lot going on that is good.
Yeah.
And, there just isn't that much exposure to the general public of the things that are really good that are happening. So,
right.
It does feel out of balance, and yet I think there is a balance going on here, and I think there's a balance that we possibly don't have total knowledge of, but there is a balance. It feels like we're out of balance, but
right.
But I truly believe that that we will eventually learn to work together.
Right. Let me read you just a little something from the book. And on this topic of having all this just upsetting news flooding into us every day, we're not the first to go through such times. In 1946, as the unspeakable slaughter and suffering of the Second World War was giving way to the Cold War and the threat of nuclear holocaust, the great Christian writer C.S. Lewis put this in a letter to a friend. Quote, "One mustn't assume burdens that God does not lay upon us. It is one of the evils of rapid diffusion of news that the sorrows of all the world come to us every morning. I think each village was meant to feel pity for its own sick and poor, whom it can help, and I doubt if it is the duty of any private person to fix his mind on ills which he cannot help. This may even become an escape from the works of charity we really can do to those we know. A great many people do now seem to think that the mere state of being worried is in itself meritorious. I don't think it is. We must, if it so happens, give our lives for others. But even while we're doing it, I think we're meant to enjoy our Lord, and in Him our friends, our food, our sleep, our jokes, and the bird's song and the frosty sunrise. It is very dark, but there's usually light enough for the next step or so." Unquote.
And not only that, but sometimes you're not meant to know where you're going, but you have just enough light to see the next couple of steps, and that's maybe all you need.
That's all you need. You can only take one step at a time. And,
this is true.
Yeah, and somehow you got this far. You're still breathing. But I think his point that some people think it's that being worried is itself meritorious. And people feel that, if I'm not worried, I'm being irresponsible. And it's just not the case. In fact, worrying is irresponsible, because worrying doesn't accomplish anything except to actually interfere with the clarity of your perception of, okay, what's actually happening here? Again, come and see. What's actually happening here? What is the most effective way that I can help the situation?
Mm-hmm. And if you can't, doesn't matter.
And if you can't, then you can't. Then go somewhere where you can be helpful.
Yeah. No, you have many profound things in the book that, I'm going to go back through it and pull a lot of them out. I love this one. You have control over your actions only. Over the results of your actions, you have no control.
Right, and that again is a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. That is you do what you can do. You do the best that you can do, and then it's not even let the chips fall where they may. You don't get to let it. It's just knowing the chips are going to fall where they fall. And you just keep doing the best that you can, and don't make yourself crazy with what happens next, with what the fruits of the action are.
I think also be the best you can be, but not according to someone else's scale, according to your own.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you don't have to live up to anyone else. You have to do your own thing.
Right.
Because you're the only one that is going to live in this awareness, and it's it is, and awareness is an amazing thing, and sinking into awareness and floating in awareness and feeling yourself a part of a cosmic awareness is a blissful place to be, and to bring as much of that into your everyday life as is possible is a really cool thing.
Right, and one of the great discoveries on this path is that if you do sit and meditate, and I do recommend, when people ask me, well, what do you recommend? The number one thing that I recommend for most people is set up a time every day, same time, like brushing your teeth. So it's not a matter of, well, did I get around to it today? We always get around to brushing our teeth. So in the same way, set up where you've got, doesn't have to be long, maybe 10 minutes, something like that, 5 minutes, where you do this natural meditation. And as you mentioned earlier, there is this page on my website, which is fearlessbook.net. There is a page where I've got guided meditation audios, and they're free, and you can just use that to guide your couple 10 minutes or whatever of meditation a day. And then, as you say, we're floating in that bliss of just being aware, kingdom of heaven within, as Jesus called it. The great discovery is that you just keep doing that, and if you do that regularly, more and more, as you say, bringing it out into activity happens automatically. It happens, as I said before, physiologically. Your nervous system actually starts to function in a different way, so that it's reflecting the awareness of that inner silence more and more clearly, even as you're dealing with all the outer activity. The metaphor that the ancient yogis of India used to make this point is, they said that it's like you take a piece of white cloth and you want to dye it. So you dip it into a basin of, let's say, red dye. And while it's in the basin, it looks very bright red. So then you take it out and you stretch it out on a flat rock in the sun, and the sun bleaches out some of the color, but then the rest remains color fast. So then you dip it in the basin again, fade in the sun again, a little more remains color fast. You do dip and fade. Eventually the cloth is permanent bright red. Now, in the same way, we take our individual attention and we dip it into the basin of meditation, the basin of just being, of boundless awareness, that ocean of bliss, ocean of existence. And then we come out into activity, and when you first come out of meditation, you may be feeling like, oh man, I am mellow here. Nothing is going to get the best of me. And then after a while, it wears off. So, okay, time to meditate again. But each time a little more sticks to you, and eventually you get to where that's it, you're done.
Oh yeah. And I think the one thing that I get out of meditation that to me is I always come out with a smile on my face. And there's another, I didn't write down where it came from, but I did pull it out. It's sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. And that is so true. Just putting that smile on your face and sharing it with other people, you have no idea how it can impact people when you smile at them.
There's a wonderful new film out, a documentary about the Pope. It's called Pope Francis, A Man of His Word, directed by the great German filmmaker Wim Wenders. I really recommend this film. Actually, the two films I've seen recently that I recommend, the film about the Pope and the new documentary about Mr. Rogers.
Oh, okay.
Called Won't You Be My Neighbor. You go see that film about Mr. I once had the great good fortune to interview Mr. Rogers for a writing project, and I was in tears by the end. That man was really a saint. He was really what the Buddhists call a bodhisattva. And I think Pope Francis is in that neighborhood as well. And at the end of the film about the Pope, he looks right into the camera. He says, people ask, well, what can I do to make it a better world, a more peaceful world? He says, two things, if nothing else, the two things everyone can do. One is have a good sense of humor. The other is smile. Share your smile. And he smiles into the camera, and oh my God, it's fantastic. And that quote that you cited is from Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Zen master. Sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. What he's actually talking about is what in science is called the facial feedback hypothesis, which is that your mood is reflected in your facial expression, but then it's a two-way street. The facial expression can change the mood. And so I've got a whole chapter about that called Resting Bliss Face.
Yes, you do.
Resting bliss face, where I share some methods for having a really genuine, authentic smile to share with others and yourself. And my favorite method is and this is another mantra, and the mantra is wee.
Yes.
And the optimal way to do this is you fling your hands up in the air and you say wee. And in my workshops, I lead people. I go, okay, 1, 2, 3, wee. We do that 3 times, and then I say, okay, now try to be depressed.
Yeah, you can't.
and you can't. You cannot do. And by the way, anyone who's listening to this who suffers from depression, hearing this, you go, oh man, that's the last thing I feel like doing. Well, that's the first thing you got to do. Even if it feels it's going to. Yeah, even if it feels like it's going to kill you, this is to crack through that ice, crack through that armor. You just throw your hands up and go wee with just total, make yourself just look and sound as foolish as possible. And that will start changing the again, it's physiology, the functioning of the nervous system. The nervous system wants to function in a way that reflects happiness. We want to be wired for happiness, and there are ways of cooperating with that impulse, and this is one of them.
Oh yeah, no, it absolutely works. There's a story that I heard a long time ago about a family that took their young son into church. If you've heard it, stop me. And in the middle of the service, the little boy says, this is like a 2-3-year-old, leans over to his dad and says, Dad, I want to go wee. And his father looked at him and said, you're going to have to hold it. We're not done with church yet. And a couple of minutes later, he said, Dad, please, can I go wee? And his father said, no, you have to really hold it. We can't. Not now. It's silent prayer time almost. And just at the beginning of silent prayer time, the father figures, I can take him and sneak out. And kid leans over and says, Dad, please let me go wee. And his father said, okay. And the kid stands up in the pew and goes, wee.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was I saw that happen, and the minister looked and said, forget silent prayer. Let's all wee. And he had the whole congregation weeing. And it was just, it was so delightful. It was because, and he kept us going for a little while. And afterwards he said, that was probably better than silent prayer for most of you. At least it kept you awake,
That's great. I got an email a few months ago from a woman in Texas. And she said, Dean, I wanted to let you know that last year my husband and I attended your workshop here in Austin. And the other day we were driving home from the dealership in our new Lexus. We were on the highway and we got broadsided by a state trooper, and it knocked our car into the ditch. The car rolled a couple of times. When it came to a stop, settled down, the dust settled, we looked at ourselves, we looked at each other, we realized that we were okay, and spontaneously in unison, the two of us said, whee!
Well, it would lighten the mood just a little bit. Holy mackerel. I'm glad nobody was hurt. I except, of course, the car. You talk about loosening the bonds of addiction, including smartphone addiction. And if you could go through the smartphone addiction and what it's causing in adults, I would love you to.
Right. Again, we're all subject to distraction. There's a tendency to think there's something wrong if it's not okay to just be. I used to use the example years ago when I would be talking about this stuff, because I've been teaching this stuff since 1970. And I used to use the example of people when they get into their car, without thinking, they would immediately switch on the radio. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest, what if you just get in the car and once in a while don't switch on the radio, that it's okay to have some silence there. Nowadays, it's the phone. It's, again, you see people, and a few years ago, what I was saying was that you see people out on dates, and the moment their date leaves to go to the bathroom, the person who's still sitting there at the table in the restaurant takes out the phone. Now they don't even wait for the other person to go to the bathroom. They're just sitting there with their, like they're sitting there in prayer with their heads bowed down over the phones. Because the phones, and I love my iPhone. It's a miraculous thing. It's a window into all knowledge. It translates languages for me. I can be in instant communication. I can see my kids and my grandkids and my friends in Europe. It's fantastic. But because it's a window into everything, potentially, it's also a source of endless distraction. So if we want to feed our inability to just settle into just being and just being okay with just being, the smartphone now has become the most convenient way to do that, to just keep ourselves constantly stimulated, aroused, distracted. So the chapter in the book about this is called Meditating with the iPhone Zero. Because, again, it's just like with that guy. You take anything that you think is, anything that appears to be a problem, anything that appears to be an obstacle on your spiritual path or your meditative path, we flip it around and turn it into spiritual experience, turn it into meditative experience. So now we're going to take the iPhone or the Android phone and flip it around from a distraction to a source of meditation. And the way we do it is very, very simple, which is the next time you're standing in line, you're at the Starbucks, standing in line waiting for your coffee or whatever, and you find your hand just by reflex automatically going into your pocket to whip out the phone and distract yourself, just don't do it. You just tie yourself to the mast and don't do it. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to, and it's important to know this ahead of time, what's going to happen is you're going to feel this wave of anxiety. You're going to feel itchy. You're going to feel fidgety. Yeah, but, you know, but maybe I got another email, but maybe the president tweeted something else bizarre. Maybe, fine. Just, you know, maybe I got 3 more likes on Facebook. Just fine, whatever. And maybe you're not even thinking about this, that specifically. It's just, okay, but I'm not distracted now. I need some distraction. Fine. Let that wave of anxiety be there. Don't try to suppress it. Just let it, in fact, bring it on. Just let that sucker crash right over you. Let that wave roll right over you until it's gone, until it dissipates. And then what you will discover is that on the backside, on the far side of that wave of anxiety, is something called peace, something called silence. Even if there's, you know, noise and stuff going on the outside of you, inside you'll feel, oh, here's this silence, and then this okayness. It's fine to be just standing here in the line for coffee, and just stand there and be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, and then you can use this same approach for anything that you're addicted to. You can use it for cigarettes. You know, the urge to light the next cigarette comes along. You just tie yourself to the mast and just don't do it, and you're going to feel that wave of anxiety, and let that wave of anxiety wash over you until things settle down again. And then maybe 10 minutes later you light the next cigarette, but now you've skipped one. You know, you may skip every other cigarette or something. And every time you do that, the tobacco, the iPhone, the alcohol, whatever it is, its grip on you gets a little bit looser.
Yeah, addictions can actually control your life, and they can ruin your health.
Oh, sure,
So, you know, it's fascinating because so many people think, if I don't do this, I'll have anxiety attacks, I'll have withdrawal symptoms, I'll have, you know, they can think of all sorts of reasons to explain why they're not going to quit something. And
Sure.
I'm not saying people should quit using their smartphones. That's not.
Oh,
that's not
I use
reality.
mine. I use mine. Yeah, I love it.
But to be able to turn it off and not grab it is really it's an important thing to be able to do.
Right.
And everybody has different things that they are addicted to, whether it's chocolate or Diet Coke or you know, we all almost all of us have an addiction of some form in our life.
Yeah, here where I live in the Los Angeles area, there's quite a few 12-step groups, and my wife and I host a meditation group every other Tuesday night in Santa Monica. And anyone hearing this, by the way, that's in the area, you can find the information on my website, fearlessbook.net, and get in touch, and you can come to our Tuesday night sessions. Again, they're free. They're open to everyone. So
now,
a number of...
I was going to go into, you have a chapter on 12 steps and 2 thorns.
Yes. So a number of people in the local recovery community have discovered us, and they come to our meditations sometimes. And for example, and in that chapter you just mentioned, I tell this story. There was one girl about 20 years old. She came to a few of the meditations, didn't say anything. And then one Tuesday night, she was about to leave, and she took me aside, and she said, I just wanted to tell you, I'm a heroin addict. I've been clean for 6 months. In the meditation tonight, I settled into a place of peace and silence and healing that was so deep, so blissful. I didn't think I could ever feel this way again in this lifetime without drugs. So when you hear that, okay, this is the missing, in the 11th step, and again, I talk about this in the book, the 12 steps, which can be very effective, I think, up to a point. And then, but there's a little something missing. And one of the ways that you know this is, I mentioned there's a lot of meetings, 12-step meetings in our area here. You can always tell where the meetings are because you see the people outside on the sidewalk smoking endless cigarettes. And it's because they haven't really gone beyond their addictive craving. They've shifted it to something else. And okay, fine. If you've got to choose between heroin and cigarettes, great, cigarettes. But it's interesting. The opioid. There's all this awareness of the opioid crisis. Cigarettes in this country every year kill 10 times as many people as opioids.
Yeah.
So it seems to me, and this is not just me speculating because I've just seen it over and over again with people that come to our meditations. When you experience that deep, healing, peaceful thing that girl experienced here, that is what you've been looking for all along with the heroin or the alcohol. It's what everyone's looking for in every moment of their lives. What they're looking for with the chocolate. What they're looking for with should I take this college course or that college course? We're all looking for nirvana in every moment, and usually settling for the nearest facsimile that we can find.
That's true, and so many people think, well, I can't get there by myself. I need help, and
and it's just because they haven't gotten a little bit of clear, skillful guidance into how to find it within yourself. The first 10 steps in the 12-step program, the first 10 steps are pretty much clearing the decks. You make amends to the people that you've hurt. You acknowledge that you are an addict, that you've been powerless, and so forth. And all of it's really getting ready for the 11th step. The 11th step is through prayer and meditation, contacted our higher power. And that, so in other words, conscious contact, we had conscious contact with the higher power. Conscious contact means not just having some nice thoughts, not just praying some sincere prayers, but having the conscious experience. Once again, it's come and see, as the Buddha said, having the direct experience. And that's what that girl was describing. When you have that direct experience, then the addiction starts to fall away. I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, long time ago. And when I started getting into this stuff, I never even tried to quit. It just fell away.
You were lucky.
Yeah.
There's another part of your book that I really want to make sure we get to because it touched me so deeply. And you speak about overcoming the fear of death and overcoming the fear of losing someone that is very close to you, and how the understanding of the awareness that is part of a cosmic awareness where all of us are one takes away the separation. And it profoundly touched me. I am constantly counseling people who have lost a partner or a mate or someone very, very close to them, and you explain it so beautifully. If you can just go into it a little bit so that people can understand how there is a oneness and you can get into that oneness.
And one thing I say several times in the book in different contexts is it's good to do the fire drill before the fire.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people will say, as you said a while ago, oh, I don't have time to meditate, blah, 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 blah. And then they get sick, then they're dying, or then their spouse dies or something, and now that's the fire. Okay, what do we do about this? It's really good to have been sitting down every day and melting into that oneness, into just that ocean of beingness that underlies the waves of specific experience.
Yeah.
For one thing, doing that on a regular basis will start taking away your own fear of death, because it becomes more and more clear. Oh, this dying is just like this. Dying is just melting. When you meditate, and it becomes clearer and clearer. When you sit in meditation, you melt out of your individual identity. You're not seeing stuff in the room. You're not hearing. You're not engaged in the sights. You're not engaged in the sounds. You're not engaged in your thoughts and your attitudes about, oh, I'm this person, I'm that way. Like you're more and more. It's just being, just oceanic, and it becomes, oh yeah, dying is just like that. You're just melting into the oceanic.
Mm-hmm.
So you're prepared. You've done the fire drill. There's also some specific things which I give in that chapter. There's a breathing technique which is recommended for the time of dying, and there's a kind of narration that you can have people read to you for kind of letting go in the most optimally graceful, blissful way. The other thing which you're talking about is when your beloved, your partner, your spouse, your family member is the one that dies. And the great teaching for me on this came when my first wife, Maggie, the mother of my children, died. We had just bought our kids had grown up and moved away, and we had just bought the sweet little Tudor cottage of our dreams, and we had just moved in. The same month that we moved into this sweet little house, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it was it was rough in many ways. Fortunately, she, like me, she and I actually had met on a meditation retreat. And she dealt with it so gracefully. For one thing, when she would go and sit for chemotherapy, and there, you're sitting for long periods, and well, oh, I know how to do that. I'm a professional. You meditate. And people were there in the oncology unit were so impressed with her evenness and her graciousness and her good humor and all that, that they had her come back and teach everyone in the oncology unit how to meditate.
Wow, that's so cool.
And then later on, as she was getting more sick and, having to deal with a lot, the chemo and radiation and all that, and on the one level, it's rough, but on the deeper level, there's that part of you that's not touched by it. It's the part of you that's not touched by anything. And we all have that, but if you do some of these meditative practices, then you're in touch with it. You're consciously that part of you that's not affected by anything. And I remember her looking up at me from her hospital bed at one point and she said, "How do people who don't meditate deal with this?"
Yeah.
I just shrugged. I said, I don't know. But here's the beautiful story, is I think it was about 2 weeks before she passed. She got a phone call there in the hospital room from a friend of ours who said, "Listen, I got hold of these Tibetan monks, and I can have these monks come to your hospital room, and they'll chant this special chant for you, and it'll be really great." And she said, "Oh, really, thank you so much. But, that's not been part of my practice during my life. It would not be authentic for me. My practice is just being without hope or fear."
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, wow. Because everyone wants to be without fear. I mean, that's why I wrote this book, Fearless. But everyone wants to hold on to hope. Now, some people are not going to want to hear this part. If so, just cover your ears for the next minute. This is the advanced teaching. This is the graduate level teaching. If right now it's useful for you to hold on to hope, that's fine. Keep hope alive. That's fine. But if you want to go deeper here, we realize that hope is the flip side of fear. Hope and fear are both investments in things turning out a certain way. I hope if things turn out this way, if I recover from my cancer, if the Dodgers win the World Series, if my stocks go up, then I'll be happy. Now, the flip side of all that is the fear. If it doesn't turn out that way, then life is not okay anymore. Then I can't be happy. What if we let go of hope and fear and we're just being in this moment as it is, free of hope, free of fear? And that was Maggie's meditation. That was her teaching, and it's been an incredibly profound teaching for me.
Well, she seems to have been an amazing lady.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat room typed in a question, and they would like to know, where does anger arise from grieving? Where does the anger come from when you're grieving?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that the anger generally anger arises from fear. There's something that we see as a threat. We think that, okay, in this case, it would be, this person has died, now I'm abandoned. And, when we all have this just fear from childhood. I'm abandoned. I'm lost. My mom lost me in the middle of the mall. I'll never be found again. It's a terrifying feeling, and then we get angry. We lash out. Fear is anger is an arousal state. Remember, we were talking before about the sympathetic nervous system, and it's an arousal state, and anger is generally more comfortable than fear, and it's more comfortable than grief. It's something that makes us feel more like I'm the aggressor. I'm the one, rather than the one who's being aggressed. It makes me feel like less of a victim. So I'll be angry. I'll take the initiative. And this is why ultimately the cure for all of those is the same thing. As we go back to the root level, which is settling into that wholeness and finding out that, okay, what happens. There's ultimately nothing to fear, and as Franklin Roosevelt said, nothing to fear but fear itself, and then nothing to be angry about. Now, this does not mean trying to suppress those emotions. Suppression does not work. When we suppress something, and I talk quite a bit about this in the book, when you try to suppress an emotion, you're pressing it down, and generally it gets pressed into the body somewhere where it becomes back pain or hypertension or something. That doesn't work. What does work is settling down meditatively, sitting with the eyes closed in meditation. Also, these things we talked about before that we can do right in the thick of things. You're singing the descending fifths, or breathing through your feet, which get us more into that settled inner silence where we reconnect with our inner wholeness, and just in its own time. And these things do take time. It's gradually. In its own time, the fear and the anger, all those things, they evaporate. They can seem at the beginning, and again, the book is called Fearless, not fearless. 2 words, fearless.
Yes.
Our anger, our fear, our grief, those things can seem like big, scary monsters looming above our head. But if we look a little closer, we see, they're these big things, but they're like the balloons in the Macy's Day Parade. They're monster balloons, and what they're filled with is hot air. It's the hot air of our own stories, our own concepts. All you need to pop a balloon is a tiny little pin, and we put 1 or 2 holes in it, and gradually it starts to soften up and deflate. It may not go away completely, but after a while it's not looming above us. It's down next to our feet where it's just a soft little, bathtub toy or something. And that's what happened for me with my grieving for Maggie. I mean, one wonderful discovery And I wrote a little poem about it a couple of weeks after she died. I wrote a little haiku that went, "My heart is broken, open."
Yes.
You know, I could really find through that. I mean, that experience, obviously I never would have chosen for that to happen, but that made me a much, much better teacher, because I'm so much more able to connect with people's pain and with just the precious importance of these methods that can help us deal with pain and go beyond it.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. I have a philosophy, and it's mine alone. It doesn't apply to anybody else, but I've lived by it, and it's that no teacher should ever try to teach a lesson they haven't learned or been through themselves. Because if they try to, their words are empty, and people sense that.
Yeah.
And it's you know, I will say to somebody from time to time, I can't imagine what you're feeling, but happily I've lived a long enough life, so man, I've seen a lot. And when my husband,
no, go ahead.
No, my late husband passed away about 5 years ago, and he from cancer, and he was in the hospital bed, and he knew what my philosophy was. He says, "Well, this opens up a whole new genre for you, doesn't it?" And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, now you can talk to people about losing their mate." And I said, I could do without it, but yes, you're right. I'll have to go back and change my resume.
Right. A wonderful man who published my first two books, named Jeremy Tarcher, who he's since passed on, but he sat on the board of the Esalen Institute out here in California, which is going way back to the 60s right through to today, is a very important learning center and seminar center for and a place where a lot of the great teachers of meditative methods have gone to teach over the years. So Jeremy was a board member at Esalen, and they had an unofficial slogan, which was, "You always teach the workshop you need, and you're always your own worst student."
Yes, it's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
And that old saying about, when the teacher is ready, the students appear. When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Right.
I have a group that I meet with, and though I lead it, I'm not sure who's the teacher and who's the student.
Right.
Which
I like the word friend. We're all friends. I actually have a chapter in the book called the buddy system. We're all on the buddy system with this thing, and we all get a turn when we're the one who just feels messed up, who's lost in grief or confusion or stress or fear, and then the other one is there to remind us of what's what, and to remind us of the bigger picture, and to remind us how to turn within and find that place that's not touched. And then the next week or next month the roles could be reversed, and there's something very beautiful about that.
Oh, tell everybody about the best dog in the world.
Oh, the sweetest dog in the world.
Sweetest dog. Okay.
Right. And that's a chapter in the book. That's a method that I actually devised. It's actually an update on a Tibetan method. Sometimes you just need to pour out your story. You need someone to pour it out to. And the best listener would be the sweetest dog in the world. So what you do, the way this method works, is you sit down somewhere, close your eyes, and just imagine that you're sitting there with the sweetest dog in the world. Look at those loving eyes. Look at that eager face, and just mentally pour out your story to the dog. Don't hold anything back. Pour everything out. And the dog is the best listener in the world because he doesn't interrupt. He doesn't interpret. He doesn't try to tell you about his story. He doesn't disagree. He doesn't agree. He doesn't even understand your words. It's all this waka waka waka. But he does understand feelings. And, he said, oh, here's my dear beloved human that I love so much, pouring out all those feelings. And the dog just takes it all in without judging and just really brings it into his doggy heart where it just kind of evaporates into space. And then so you can do that, and that's it. Do that for a while until you feel more clear, more emptied out, more unburdened, and then go about your business. Or you can then, and I talk about this in the book, okay, now take a break, take a walk around the block or something, come back, sit down, and now do the whole thing again, only this time you close your eyes and you imagine you're the dog. Mm-hmm. And sitting there next to you is you, telling that story, waka, 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 and now you're the dog underneath that doggy fur in the middle of all that doggy metabolism, taking the whole thing in through your doggy eyes and just evaporating it into your sweet doggy heart. And then just take it all until it's all gone. And I guarantee you go through that, and whatever your story is, you're going to feel much more clear, much more unburdened by the time you're done.
Well, all of your methods do exactly that. They help to bring somebody to a place of better awareness.
Yeah.
And when you have that, especially, I'm going to go back to someone passing, because when someone passes, they pass into total awareness, and in meditation, you can get to total awareness, so that there's not a separation, and it's not like you've lost someone; it's like you've gained everybody. And
I tell the story how the morning that my wife Maggie passed, and she had so many dear friends who were wanting to keep informed, and I sent out the email to everyone, and the subject line of the email was, "Now she is everywhere."
Yes.
Sorry, this is the difficulty of doing this on the phone. There's
I know.
We keep right. Okay, you go.
Okay, it is amazing when something like that happens. The Chinese have it right. When a child is born, they wear black because they're mourning the fact that the child will now have a long life to go through and difficulties and lessons to learn and all of that. And they, at the death, they wear white to celebrate that the journey is over and they are finally free to be with whoever, whatever is in the great beyond for their particular philosophy. And it is true. It is for that person who is passing, it is a joyful experience.
Oh yeah, it's melting into bliss. But if you've been meditating, doing some meditation, experiencing melting into bliss, then it's familiar. But if you've not done that, then the tendency is to panic, to try to hold on, especially if you've got all people around you in the hospital room who also don't have understanding, and they're saying, "No, hold on, fight, don't stop fighting." Well, there's a time to stop fighting.
Yeah.
And there's a time to just gracefully, gratefully melt into the light. Nothing better.
No, and I think you explained the concept of giving it up in such a positive way that I loved it.
Give up. People say don't give up, but giving is a good thing, and up is a good direction. It up. Give it up to God, or give it up to life. Give it up to the universe.
It is, and your book has such. It's serious stuff, and yet it is put in a framework that that you can't wait to see what's coming next, and you go from I in the intro I said you go from Buddha and Jesus and really high stuff that way to Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld and Willie Nelson, and my very first I mentioned at the beginning I had some kind of spontaneous opening experiences in childhood, and the most dramatic one was one day I picked up a Mad magazine with Alfred E. Newman on the cover, the grinning idiot mascot, and his motto, "What, me worry?" And just spontaneously that triggered something in me, and I let go of all my worrying, and I just went into a state of what later on, years later, when I started reading the books, I realized, oh, that's what they talk about. That's samadhi, that's satori, that's bound, that's ananda, that's bliss. Just so the fact that Alfred E. Newman was my first guru, fine. So that has predisposed me to find that wisdom anywhere. Find it in comic books. So I wrote a whole book about enlightenment lessons from the movies. It's called Cinema Nirvana, and people told me, "Oh, you've got to write about the Matrix and write about Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, all this obvious stuff." So I skipped all that, and I wrote about Jaws and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Godfather, because I figured, boy, if you can find Nirvana in those films, you can find it anywhere.
Oh, sure, but the one movie you haven't mentioned that you wrote about that I actually went and found and watched on YouTube is The Sunshine Makers.
Oh, yes. This was a cartoon, and by the way, there's now a second film with the same title, which is a documentary about people who were manufacturing LSD and selling it in the 60s. That different Sunshine.
No, we're looking for the cartoon.
The cartoon
came out in '38. Yeah.
Yes, 7-minute cartoon, which I saw years ago when I was maybe 5 years old. And there's these little wonderful kind of elves who wake up in the morning and they work. Isn't it delightful?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, they wake up in the morning and they bow down to the sun and they sing the praises, "Hail His Majesty the Sun," and then they have their little kind of distillery where they gather the rays of the sun and they put it into milk bottles and deliver the milk bottles full of sunshine. The way they used to deliver milk bottles full of milk in my childhood, and then they get into a ruckus with these dark, black-coated, black-hatted, miserable characters, these kind of gremlins, these trolls who sing, "We're happy when we're sad. We're always feeling bad. How are you? Miserable. That's fine." And so it's the happiness versus misery. And of course, the happy elves win the battle when they take their milk bottles full of sunshine and shoot them with boomerangs and things at the gremlins and turn them into happy characters. And in a way, that's what that's what this is all about. I sort of. Yep. I realize in retrospect that at the age of 5 or whenever I saw that cartoon, I was sort of getting, those were my marching orders. That was my mission in life, to in my own little way deliver those milk bottles full of sunshine.
Well, and it's what's most needed in life today is joy, and in my mind, in many ways, laughter is the best medicine. And I know when I was in the pulpit, I knew that if I could get everybody laughing, that my message was not only imprinted, but really imprinted, and at some point in time, they would use it to their benefit.
Right.
And it changed my life when I realized that happiness and joy, it's catching. And, you can't, it has to be genuine, but if it is genuine, you cannot avoid it. It's going to get you.
And it's what all the masters were teaching. People think that, the teachings of the Buddha were so metaphysical. He was completely practical. He said, I'm here to eliminate suffering from life. I'm here to, right? They were here to eliminate suffering, or at least, to whatever extent possible, to reduce suffering, to bring in the opposite of suffering, to bring in happiness. It comes down to that. And they all said, and it's easy. Jesus said, my yoke is light, my burden is easy.
Mhm. And what's so cool about this, this is a way to get to that place inside of yourself, to share the awareness, and then first with yourself, and then by living it with other people, not necessarily teaching it verbally, but by being an example of the expression of it.
Absolutely. And people ask me this all the time. I'm so deep in this meditation now, or I'm loving your books and all that, and my husband or my wife, usually it's the husband, is not interested, and how can I, and usually I tell them, don't worry about that. It's like one per household is enough. It's like you're the designated driver. And the best, you're the designated diver. The best thing you can do is as you say, Barbara, be the best example. You just become a lighthouse, and that will affect the people, especially the people closest to you. Even if they never sit and close their eyes or do any of this at all, it will affect them. It will start to soften them up. They'll start feeling, and it'll creep up on them in such a natural way that they may not even realize what's going on, but it will affect them. And at some point, they may even say, "Boy, you've become." When I first started doing this stuff way back in the 60s, and my girlfriend at the time, I started going to these weekend meditation retreats. And after I came back from my third or fourth one, my girlfriend told me, every time you come back from one of these retreats, you're a little nicer.
It does work.
Yeah, it does.
We're getting really close on time, and they cut me off real quick here. So I do want to thank you so very much. This has been a great 2 hours, and I am so delighted that we could do this. I guess in closing, I want to say thank you. And the name of your book is Fearless, and I guess the best words to end with are come and see. Check it out.
Come and see, and you can check it out at my website, fearlessbook.net, and my travel schedule is there. I'm doing workshops all over the U.S.
Okay. Thank you so very much. I so appreciate tonight. And good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This will be up on YouTube later on tonight. If you missed part of it, you'll be able to catch it there. Good night now. Good night, Dean.
Good night. Thanks so much.